This is a documentary called Scala, ! This is not a documentary about the classical radio station that gives you classical music for modern life, for which we both
Fantastic,
work.
yeah.
This is a drama about London's cinema club. I mean, I think it's, a riotously entertaining, yet also, I think, impressively serious account of the legacy of London's wildest cinema club. The rise and fall of the Scala, co-directed by Jane Giles, who ran the cinema for a long period, and Ali Catterall, who is probably best known to many as an author. He wrote a book called Your Face Here, which is a book about British cult movies. It follows the establishment of the Scala Cinema Club from its original home in Tottenham Street to its then iconic home up in King Street, in King's Cross. You've gone past the Scala many times, of course, and now it's a nightclub, I believe. So what happens is we hear how this was set up to show a very, very diverse range of films, from classics, lost classics, established classics, to cult movies, exploitation movies, horror movies, kung fu movies, LGBTQIA plus movies, strange, weird kind of double bills of things. Sometimes stuff from television that they would do all dayers of. They would have the Laurel and Hardy fan club in there, the Sons of the Desert. I mean, literally everything. Now, I remember, so I'm the age I'm 60. I'm 60 now. When I was when I was a kid, I used to love going to late night cinema. Obviously, during the 80s, most of the time I was in Manchester, and the cinema there was the Arbor. But I would go to the Scala when I was down, and I remember, for example, going to a slasher all-nighter with my friend Simon Booth. It was 6 slasher films back to back. You started about 10 o'clock and you end up 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember going there to watch, there's a film called Thundercrack. Scala used to play Thundercrack all the time because it was a cinema club, they were able to play films that didn't have BBFC certificates. And I remember sitting there watching Thundercrack thinking, we are all going to get arrested. It cannot be legal to be watching this. And what Scala, ! does is it blends archive images, footage, clips from some of the movies, and then interviews with people like John Waters, whose movies, Pink Flamingos and all that stuff were a kind of staple of the Scala, with patrons such as Mark Moore, Joe Cornish, Alan Jones, obviously, Ralph Brown, from Withnell and I, who used to work in the coffee bar, and, in this clip, Stuart Lee.
What I really remember, though, is not so much the people that felt that they belonged here in this audience as the people that had kind of just turned up perhaps to shelter or not really knowing what they'd come to. I remember being in a screening of the Cukor Brothers' Thundercrack, which is a very extreme film. I don't even know if I would watch it now, to be honest. But there was an old man there sitting near the balcony who, as it became more and more bizarre and obscene, kept standing up, turning around and sort of addressing the rest of the room, sort of asking us why we were there and what was wrong with us. And yeah, he would then sit down and continue watching it. You don't get that in a multiplex.
I love that clip because that is literally what Scala was like. I mean, it was...
All the rules are being broken there.
Yes. I mean, it was... So one of the things that the Scala was famous for in the King's Cross Scala was the Scala cat, okay? The story of this is in the film, but the Scala cat would prowl around the cinema, and people would be watching things at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Some people would be awake, some people would be asleep, some people would, didn't know why they were there. And the Scala cat would jump on you, and completely out of nowhere. The seats were fiercely uncomfortable, which is actually quite good if you're watching an all-nighter, because it was the thing that would sort of stop you from falling asleep. In the course of the documentary, you discover that in the history of the Scala, there's things like Iggy and the Stooges and Lou Reed being photographed for album covers at the Scala. We hear about its key role as a venue, key role in punk, and then new romanticism. The most important thing, however, is this: is that I was somebody who I loved the Scala. I loved the kind of the mythology of it. I loved the I don't mean Joe Cornish when I said Joe Cornish. I mean Adam Buxton. I love the way in which that it was a home from home for misfits. And what the film does is it has all these accounts of people, many from the LGBTQ plus community, talking about how they could be whoever they wanted to be when they were there. wherever you were in your evolution, whether you were somebody it was the way you dressed or the way you acted, the way you behaved, there was something about the Scala that they didn't care. They genuinely didn't care. It was a come one, come all. You know, we're going to show this weird selection of movies, and you're just gonna enjoy it. And the documentary is funny and wild, but it's also serious because it does talk about how this was a hub of inspiration. There was a number of people who were there who then went on to do really, really good work, become, whether it's podcasters or filmmakers or musicians, or there was something happening. And if you're an aficionado, obviously it hits all the bases. There's all the stuff about, the weirdness of the building, the whole process of getting the tickets, the strangeness of the films, the brilliant interview with John Waters about when they got taken to court for showing Clockwork Orange, and him talking about, oh, that's a badge of honor if they take you to court for showing stuff. But also, it works if you've never, ever known about or cared about Scala. Did you ever go to the Scala?
No.
No, okay. So
I went, but not to see a film. I think there was
a gig.
Yeah, it was a gig. Yeah.
Was it a New Romantic thing? Was it the Spandau Ballet thing?
No, it was the Radio 1 thing.
Oh, okay, fine.
But...
So we did a screening of it down in Exeter, where it was shown to students who were too young to have been around when the Scala was around, and many of them from overseas as well. And they just loved it. They got it, and they absolutely loved it. And the reason is because the documentary does that thing. The thing I always say, that a documentary should make you interested in a subject you're not interested in. Well, it's one thing me looking at it and going, oh yeah, I remember that seat, and I remember that double bill. Because I actually programmed when I came down to London, when I was working for Time Out, I used to do the listings for Time Out, and the Scala program would come in. The Scala program was just like the most mad collection of films, and like so many of them. And I would sit there doing listings, having to get the Scala listings into Time Out, and you'd get one of them wrong, and somebody would turn up to see Hitchcock's Rebecca, and unfortunately they were showing Thundercrack. These had real world consequences. And so I'm looking at it and thinking, I know all that stuff, and I remember all the stuff about the cat, and I remember that person being there. I don't remember them, but then they weren't famous then, and all that kind of stuff. And then Alan Jones's, his memories of it, of doing Shock Around the Clock there with him and Stephanie Vorzin. So fine. So for me, it's like a trip down memory lane, but it's also really encouraging because it reminded me of this weirdly, dangerously safe space. That on the one hand, it had an air of danger, but there was a thing about acceptance. But the best thing about it is, if you'd never known about the Scala, if you'd never had any knowledge of or interest in it, it would make you interested, because it's a story about something, that this kind of weird artistic eruption that just happened almost spontaneously. Obviously, hard work and enthusiasm of people behind it, but people going, we want to give people a full encounter with all the extraordinary stuff that cinema can be and cinema can do. And some of it will be extreme, and some of it will be old, and some of it will be weird, and some of it will be in color, and some of it will be upside down and back to front because the projectionist put the reels in the wrong way. And it's so funny and it's so exciting, but it's also got a really serious purpose to it, because I think it is about a community of people who were, misfits and outsiders, and people who were sidelined, finding a place in which they could be them. So Ralph Brown tells this story about this bloke comes in, he's got hair like this, he's sitting at the coffee bar at 3:00 in the morning. He starts singing a song. He thinks, oh, he's got an all right voice. Won't see him again. 3 weeks later, he's on Top of the Pops, and it's Boy George. It was that kind of place. And I love the documentary. I've now watched it 3 times, and I just thought it was joyous and really invigorating and fired by that love of cinema that you only get from a cinema club. That is so, what's the phrase about, if somewhere didn't exist, you'd have to invent it. I loved the doc. I just thought it was great. I thought it was really, really great. And
where do I see it?
It's in cinemas. Also, the BFI are doing a Scala season in which they're going to show some of the films that they would show at the Scala. I think they're showing Thundercrack.
Is Thundercrack on over Christmas? Christmas Eve? No? Is it not? Has it ever been on television?
No, Simon.
Why?
It's unbroadcastable. I mean, that thing when Stuart Lee says, I don't know if even I'd watch it nowadays. Okay. I literally sat there in the cinema. I mean, I'd seen a bunch of stuff there, and, I remember sitting there thinking, we are going to get arrested. There is no way it can be legal to be watching this film.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed
watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.